With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. My name's Michael Thompson. I'm with my friends S.J. Jennings, Jim Cheney, and Greg Sailors. And this is good, man. I'm excited that we're going to be bringing these into the podcast from time to time. There's just too many to make a series, SJ.
Yeah.
And the women really gave us this idea when we did the Engaging in the Hearts of Women. And they were talking specifically about the Deepening Weekend. But there's so many things to explore and to talk about and things to bring to the table that we've discovered. And that was for the women. And here's a working title that we're going to be using, and then we'll give you the subtitle in a minute. But this is I would say a series, but it's not going to be 1, 2, 3. This is something we're going to talk a lot about, engaging the hearts of men.
Mm-hmm.
Engaging the hearts of men. And so I think the subtitle for this is just walking with men in men's ministry.
Right.
What does it look like to have allies in the fight, in the battle for the hearts of men, particularly in men's ministry? So allies, right?
This should be easy.
Right.
Right?
What do we love?
Can you, Greg, can you just quote, I could do it maybe, the Haynes Maxwell quote from some years ago. Do you have that just off the top of your head?
Yeah, Haynes, obviously, he's a great ally of ours in Charlotte area, the barn. Yeah, he said, if you're building a men's ministry, then you'll probably be all right on your own. But if you're in a war, you better have friends and allies and know who they are.
Yeah.
Makes me think of D-Day again. I mean, I know we talked about D-Day last week or the week before. You know, when those guys got dropped out of those planes, they were scattered all to here and gone. I mean, they were not with their units. So what did they do? They just gathered up guys along the way, right?
Yeah.
So somebody from Charlie Company might be with I Company, or, you know, with the 101st might be with the 82nd.
I love
and
that.
They just moved together
They
as
didn't
allies.
abandon the plan or the mission, but they had to re-scramble their, all right, who I'm with is who I'm with, and we're moving to our initiative. We're moving to our
We've all got
our
the same
space.
flag on our shoulder, right? So we know what our mission is.
And of course, there was a lot of confusion, but the goal was the same. I mean, survival,
Right.
Victory.
Yeah. I'm glad it's not like today where there's not a lot of confusion.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like this gladiator quote, too. It's on our website. Whatever comes out these gates, we've got a better chance of survival if we work together. Do you understand? If we stay together, we survive. From Gladiator, if you remember, guys, they're coming out into the Coliseum, and it's, so true.
So many men just went right to that scene. You don't have to even describe it, but you start to put that line together. And these are epic lines, and we remember them as men, I think, because our hearts resonate with the epic story that we're in. And we are in a war. There's an enemy, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so what are some of the important initiatives that are required, that are needed? Because Jim, tongue in cheek, we were saying there is a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of isolation. It's just hard to do, even in our attempts at building alliances and building bridges and building relationships and friendships. It honestly is just kind of easier to do by yourself. That's why Haynes Maxwell's quote has lived on and on and on with us.
So good.
Doing ministry in a silo, isolated, in a small way, it's always going to be good and important, and it needs to happen that way. But to have something bigger than your 8 or 9 or 10 or your church's ministry, to be aligned with something bigger, I think is what we want to talk about today.
All right. Well, I don't often argue with you, but I would argue that it's not necessarily easier to do it on your own, but it's less messy, is maybe what you meant.
That could be true.
Yeah. I mean, because all of us have tried to do it on our own. Men's ministry included, some of the guys around this table, we've done it on our own and tried to do that. And it always falls short for some reason, somehow.
That's a good point.
Well, we want to talk about some of those reasons. That's, I think, why we're having this circle up. Greg and I were with these men who are responsible, these two men who are responsible for a large number of churches in North Carolina, 4,500 churches under their association banner. I wish we'd had the mics on I really do.
Right.
It was a rich
This is
time.
men responsible. Their jobs, they're being paid to create environments and to unite and work together. Men's ministry, we call them men's initiatives, but men's ministry to all of these churches, big and small. And they were basically saying, it's crazy. It's so hard to do. And there's a lot of reasons why. Turnover among men, they get a key man in the game, and his job calls him somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Or he has a moral failure, or there's a change in leadership and they shut it down. Like you said, confusion, distraction. There's so many things that come against us and our friendship with God and our friendship with each other. If that's what we were made for, connecting with God and connecting with each other, to experience the love of God and experience love amongst one another, then you know what the enemy's trying to do. Just blow it all to hell.
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
Just have men isolated, have men separated. We talk about this, Greg, all the time. Busy is the 4-letter word of the kingdom of darkness.
Right.
Busyness. It just is not the kingdom life. And yet we have to stand and lean into that wind because it's blowing hard in our culture. What's one of your favorite quotes, Jim? When you want something done,
Give it to a busy man.
And it'll get done.
add it to his plate.
Yeah, intentionality. We talk about men's ministry a lot, and then we get the great opportunity when you guys call in and have conversations with Jim and I about how to start men's ministries or what do we do with the book, Michael, just all those different things. But one of the things that really hits me, Jim, is intentionality as we're talking about this, because lots of churches don't do that well with men, or even we in our own personal lives. As a theme, SJ, soul care here at Zoe right now a little bit, we're not great at the intentionality of taking care sometimes of our own hearts as men.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so-
we live in the same current and push against the same wind everybody else does in ministry.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Right,
on
exactly.
this mission. I mean, busyness, chores, things that need doing.
So the
get
things that
done.
gives me the attaboys are the things that I do because I want that affirmation. I want that kind of attention. And therefore, we see that spill over into churches. We see that spill over into small groups. We see that spill over, or the lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah, until there's a dissatisfaction, right? Until
Right.
it becomes like drinking sand and you're just like, man, there's got to be something else out there. Or you hit a point where you are circumstantially, you need something different, right? Maybe your marriage is in trouble or there's an issue with a child or whatever the case may be. That's what we have seen. These men that are seeking something of the more that we talk about, they have this motivational factor behind them, and they are varied, but there seems to be this pattern of dissatisfaction or desperation.
Why is it that we are so inclined to find the things, to see the things that we don't want or to know what we don't want? I mean, you could almost have a list of 10 reasons why I don't want to join the men's ministry. I don't like that guy. I don't like their theology. I can't get up on Friday mornings at 6:30. You know, you could come up with 10 reasons right off the top of your head.
I think that's why SJ said at the beginning, don't ever do that again. Disagree.
No, I'll just argue with you.
Argue.
No,
That's
I
what you
can,
said, argue. Don't
I
ever
can
do
disagree.
that again.
I just can't argue.
No, but it was the messiness of it. You just described
it's
the
the
10
mess.
things that are the messiness of it. And how many of us have been in circles and we've heard a man say in that very circle, man, this is the most important couple hours of my week. This is so significant to do this, to be a part of this. And then about a month later, seat's empty,
Gone.
Mhm.
and
Sad.
And it happens. I mean, the bigger story shows us for a specific amount of many, many different reasons, but the larger story shows us it's all to pick a guy off, get him in isolation, whatever he's done or not done, whatever's pulled him away, schedule life, and so this is just really hard. It's hard to do for a reason. And I think my point earlier was we're made for this. And so the enemy's violently opposed to this. Connectedness with God, connectedness with each other. That is not easy. It's messy. And to try to do it within a circle of friends and friendship, your circle's not going to be immune from the stuff. As a matter of fact, it's in that circle that the stuff gets to come up. And you can talk about it. Quick story, Greg. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a circle of about 20, 25 guys, and they meet every week. And this one guy, I could just tell across the circle, he was about at my 3 o'clock and, hey, how's it going? Are you okay? And we were 20 minutes into the conversation. Guys had already got their coffee and we're sitting around, and his courage was so good. And maybe it was just desperation. There's a fine line between the two. And he just said, man, I'm doing well. Tears, start talking about his sons, talking about a former life, and in this case, a former wife, and just not going well in that custody and those kind of things. And then he apologized. This was the crazy thing. He apologized for bringing it up.
Wow. Yeah.
And I said, I did, in the studio, you can see me, big timeout, like I'm a coach running out on the field. Timeout. Are you kidding? Bro, this is the place. Chuck, the study, the academic journey we're on, the exploration of these truths, I mean, that's all good, but it's so that we can have these moments, bro.
Intimacy.
These moments.
Yeah. If that's not what it's about, what's it about?
He literally went from his head down. It was just like I touched his chin and brought his head up and said, bud, this is why we do this. And believe me, if there's one guy in there, there's 10 who.
So how did you get there? How did he have enough courage? He was desperate enough?
He was vulnerable enough. I called him out a little bit, because what's the most easy question to dodge and the hardest one to answer? It's the same question.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Yeah.
The real answer is how much time do you have and how much do you want to know?
Mm-hmm.
But that particular morning, and because of what we've been exploring in that small group about warfare, this is where he was getting his tail kicked. He felt like, and it's where the enemy was working. And he was just, with Father's Day coming up and things like that, it was just poignant.
I think, Michael, too, the one other question would be, aside from how much do you want to know and how much time do you have, would be, can I trust you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you've fostered an environment there where they could trust you and the whole group. He could trust the whole group to be transparent.
You should have seen the pride of lions come around that hurting lion among us. He was apologizing. He said, I'm sorry for being such a mess and taking the group's time. I mean, so if you're asking me what's in the way or to how to reach a man's hearts, what are some of the obstacles to that? Boom. Am I worth their time? Does this really matter? Is it safe? What are they going to do? I mean, all of that comes
Right. It's like you say at the weekend, Michael, how many lies does it take to take a good man out? This is the exact thing. The enemy has got this common mission for all of us, and it's not that far from my lie to your lie, SJ, in what we've believed, and he's believed it. He's taken it.
There was more ministry and more brotherhood and camaraderie in that morning than probably several mornings previously because
somebody's
it got
intimate
real.
and
Not that we've been studying stuff that isn't helpful, but that was very real.
Yeah, it fleshed out.
Do you think some of his response, Jim, too, came from being trained to think that way? Sorry, I wasted the group's time.
Absolutely. But the group must have done something. I mean, he was desperate, yes, but the group must have also done something to say being vulnerable is okay. You can trust us. There must have been some time and
how long
trust.
has he been there?
Oh, I mean, he's a 3-4 year
so he's a
member.
card-carrying dude.
Yeah, he's a
he knows
card-carrying
the
member.
culture then.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of foul on his part, Jim, like, all right, you know the culture. You know you can do this. Sometimes it takes a certain season
you gotta
before a
get
man's
ready.
willing
The
to
response
do
of that group, though, and this goes back to when one guy's down, the other's Ecclesiastes, there's friends to help him up. I mean, the culture, I think that we believe is so critical for men's initiatives and men's ministry and men's groups. I mean, this is what we do day to day. We believe an orientation is required. That's a whole other conversation. That's a big one. But what happened, Greg, in that moment for this man, one guy got up and said, this is not acceptable, bro. We're here for you. Let's go. Let's pray on this. Let's pray for your kids. So all of a sudden there's 20 guys around this guy, right? And hands on, and they're praying over him and for him.
So good.
I've been that guy in the seat.
Yeah.
And I've been that guy with my hands on another man. And when it's my turn, I want oriented men around me to go, why are you saying that? It's not true. It's not you. We're here. Let's go. We got you.
So how do we organize this for the listeners who are wondering, how do I get my small group to be like that? How do I get that kind of impact in my small group?
Yeah, what's the first step? Where do we start? And I'll answer that question, even though I just asked it, by saying,
Those are my favorite questions.
I like answering
my kids know
questions.
that. I love to ask them the questions that I'm about to answer.
Yeah.
So
I really think it is going after your own heart. Getting your own heart back is where you start. That's how that group starts. being willing to engage in this process that we talk about and have talked about so often.
Can you do that by yourself?
That's a great question.
I think you can start by yourself
That's
in
right.
some way. I mean, I'm thinking of the book, The Heart of a Warrior, that we're hopeful will start that process. A guy on his porch, a guy in his kitchen, a guy in his lounge chair, whatever he reads, that would start the orienting process. But Jim, to your point, at some point, a man has to integrate into the company of other men. And hopefully you're integrating into a circle of others pursuing such orientation, like-hearted, like-minded.
Where do you find them? How do you do that?
We answer these questions all the time, Jim.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great
Jim's
question.
asking it on purpose
I
because
know.
he's trying to push us to that.
Good job.
Yep.
Good job. And because they go look for it. You know, you get to a certain place where you're awakened to this, and then you have to have more. You have to have more. And so some people find us through exploring more, or find others that are doing similar things, Jim. And then they make the call. They're courageous enough to make the call, and we get to have the great conversation of, what does this look like in your culture, in your church, in your circle?
Mm-hmm. I think you guys, Jim and Greg, really lead the charge on our allies initiative. And so good information is always good. I mean, it just is. Good tools, good equipment, good maps, good direction. That's always good. And we believe that God has entrusted to us some really good instructions, tools, resources, relationships. So I think that's all a part of the starting of that conversation of how, men out there who are listening, like, okay, I want that. How do I do it? You need to email Greg, you need to email Jim and ask them, engage in that. If you are responsible for a group of men, I mean, we love helping that guy. If you want to start a group of men, maybe we have some addresses, zip codes and stuff where you live, we can help start that. But the book, the Heart of a Warrior book, is an important tool to get around a common language, theology, belief. And before you can become the warrior, you have to become the beloved son. It's just what you said, Esther. You have to get your heart back to be good for the hearts of others.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to play injured, trying to play, what's that old Monty Python? It's just a flesh wound,
Yeah, and he's just got stumps.
Have you guys ever had a concussion?
I have not.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I mean, I had a couple, and
I can tell, by the way.
Now
You can tell the guys that have.
But now, Jim, right? The protocol is wonderfully off the charts. They're so protective.
Back then it wasn't.
Of that. No, you
rub some dirt on it, get back in the game.
But man, how
Smelling
many
salts.
right? So how many guys are playing, doing life, and they've suffered a couple of these concussions?
Right.
We've all taken hits, and so what's it look like too? That's why it's so hard for men. I think to enter into the vulnerable relationships because of the injuries we've taken. Father's Day's, it's kind of a celebration.
Yeah.
But right, we know a lot of men that Father's Day's not.
It's hurtful. I mean, we asked the
not
question
the easiest
on our Zoe Allies Facebook page, and if you guys aren't on that, you go to our Zoe Facebook page and you'll find a way to get there. But we have a specific group there that we talked about. Hey, tell us about your dad. And I knew what that would do, right? You'll get 3 or 4 good stories, and then you'll have a guy that's just like, I just can't.
Yeah.
Well,
or it used to be hard.
All right, used to be.
There was a couple on that I saw that, frankly, this used to be hard, but
they're getting healing.
getting better.
Yeah. I think it may be getting better now. But, when you go to church on Mother's Day, the mothers are getting celebrated and getting flowers. And you go to church on Father's Day and kind of get up against the wall and let me give you a beating,
The Babylon Bee, you guys, I'm sure have heard of that, seen that. They had a great meme about that. They said they've changed it to National Toxic Masculinity Awareness Day. It was actually a pretty good article once you read it. But anyway.
I get it, SJ. Churches don't have to follow the annual calendar and have, certain Sundays represent certain themes. And that's okay that they don't. And to your point, regarding fathers, why not? Why wouldn't you? It hit me really hard in a wonderful way this recently about fathers that, you know what God wants to describe himself in the scriptures as? Father.
Abba.
And then he shares that role with us in this thing he created, family. And I don't want to get into a whole lot of that discovery. There. So back to how do you reach a man's heart? If we're going to explore that question for the rest of the podcast, that's a place we start. Tell me about your relationship with your dad.
What's your story? And then even we want to drill down in what's your relationship with your father? Because
they share the name, your dad and Abba, Father, they share the name. There's a relationship to that. There's a correlation to that. And how your dad handled your heart will play in the spiritual realm in how you see God or don't.
I've seen, and we all around this table have, and many of you listeners have too, when you ask a guy that question, tell me about your dad. You know, when you've earned the right to ask that question, and it doesn't typically take too long, but there's usually one or two responses. You know, he was great, you know, and they go into this whole thing of how awesome he was, or there's a pause.
It's pretty easy to read quickly if there's a pause. You're like,
That's
all
right.
Yeah.
And how much do I push or not?
But we don't want men to stay there. I think that's a critical early mile marker. To move towards orientation, it's like you still have to start at some of the same baselines.
And that's a great place to start.
You know, where did your concept of father even begin?
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, no matter how good your dad was, men take a hit. The concussions come.
Sure.
I mean, the enemy's that good. I think that's another part, Greg. Would you talk about just this orientation about the larger story? I mean, Jim, if we don't have common ground that we are in World War II, or this place, World War III, that we are
Here's what
in
the enemy
a war,
looks like.
that context, I mean, how many men live in that context? And if I'm walking with men that don't live in that context, that's one of the second places I want to go.
Yeah. I don't
Do
know.
they see it?
I don't know who said it. I might have came up with it. It's pretty good, Michael. So Gary probably did it.
That's right.
Barkalow.
Thanks, Gary Barkalow.
That's right. I think I was walking around as though I was sleepwalking through life for a lot of years. I just didn't see. I didn't know how to see. I didn't know where to look. And so that was just my orientation. You know, How do you wake up from that? You know, is a good question. And for me, it's different for everybody. But you talk a lot about this with Two Realms and Two Kingdoms is a great teaching that we do at the weekend. And, you know, we talk about knowing that there is the enemy and that there is the Lord, and then there's your own flesh, and then how do all these things, the world and the enemy and God, work together? Until you wake up to that and can see clearly, it's hard to get a good orientation about what's next.
Yeah. Jim, you've been in this game. How would you answer that question about reaching a man's heart and orientation? I mean, it's not just one thing, but what are some of the things that you found in, 30 some years of going after the hearts of men, creating these circles? You know, you brought the bats and balls and dumped them out for young men and other men to play this game of faith and journey in Christianity. But what have you found?
It would be nice if you started with guys who had an interest and a passion in getting healed. That doesn't always happen, but it's easier if you do. And it tends to be, I think, the older guys. For me, you know, I had tried everything else and nothing else worked. So I had to get to a point where I was old enough to have tried everything else. So an older guy, maybe. It's hard to reach that 25 to 35-year-old who's in his career pattern and busy with kids. And so you find somebody who might be interested, might be one thing. You model vulnerability. You model realness. You gradually start to share some, as you called it, information content. The Heart of a Warrior is a great source for that. You start sharing some of these things that we've talked about. Orientation. What is the story that we're living in? Is the battle against flesh and blood, or is it a spiritual battle? So you start forcing, might be a too strong a word, you start encouraging deeper conversations. You model vulnerability. You share your story and your vulnerabilities. You ask questions. You listen. You try to find the man's story. And you just gradually add guys that are of the same mind and heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So is it any wonder? I mean, just with that list alone, and it's not as easy as a list. We wish it was, but it's not. You've got a variety of things to step into, and that's the opportunity and that's the challenge, to find other men to rally around something. And I think some churches, Greg, are trying to create the weekly environment. There's a lot of series out there and academics and some of those things that are good. I think one of the things we're finding and promoting over the last few years, heavy with churches especially, is if you look at this as academic and you look at this as semester to semester, quarter to quarter, how many of the people that you went to school with do you still stay in touch with? It can't be about the curriculum, even though you're 100% right, Jim. There's important things to explore together, the resources that you move together. But if we say this all the time, if you're only meeting that one time a week with those guys, there's no way. There's no friendship. Right. You're just in a class.
Yeah.
You're just in a class. Tuition is your time. And when you're done, you're done. And if you're not doing the work and bringing it into that environment to have the conversations about your life, that's why this is hard.
I think of Dead Poet Society. If you remember in the classroom, right?
Tearing the pages out.
That's right. Well, before we get to the tearing the pages out, which is the best part, right? And then huddle up, right? But no, before that, it's like, all right, we're going to learn our rhyme and our diction or something like that out of poetry. And so he's going through it, and then he's like, all right, this is not what we're doing. And then they start tearing the pages out
of the academic. That's
right.
Yeah. You can't, it's a scene where he says you can't rate and score poetry.
It's not an academic endeavor.
It's the human race. It's feeling. It's
love.
deep.
It's joy. It's all those things. And
Right.
so it's so interesting as we get the great honor and opportunity to talk to these churches and men that want to do this. Most of the guys, when they get to us, and I don't know if that's because of the Exploring More podcast or other things, they are hungry, Jim, usually. They're pretty hungry. It's not an academic call. It's not. Maybe 1 out of 10 is an academic call, but usually it's there. We are ready to go. What do we need to do?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to fire you guys some questions, and here's my rules. You can have 1-word answers, and that you're going to get 10 points for. And every word you use after that, you're losing a point.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Jim's ready for the rules, right? I'm talking about 1 word or the shortest of phrases to answer these questions. I think this would be really interesting. So what would be your definition of a successful men's ministry?
Redemptive brotherhood.
Restored hearts.
Intimacy.
Of course, I'm going to have more words than you guys. You guys did that well. I'm going to say, dang, I'm going to lose already.
I got 10.
Scott's got to get some credit.
That's right. 2 or more men walking with God together. I lose.
Intimacy.
Yeah. All right, second question.
So wait a minute. Well, I got to figure out the math of what your score
I
is.
know. I think
Somebody
I got 4.
at home's taking
I got a
score.
4. All right, moving on. What is the motivation for going to a men's ministry, church? What do you think is the motivation for stepping into a men's ministry?
Yeah, whether it be at a church or wherever.
Could be desperation.
Yeah, I thought of that. What else?
Could be your wife kicking you out.
You don't get extra credit, Jim.
Yeah, we're still on the point system here.
No, sorry.
Sadly, I think it's duty for a lot of people.
Okay,
Good.
that's on the
word.
negative ledger.
That's a little bit
I'd say
negative.
hungry.
Yeah, more was the word that came to my mind.
Okay.
Yep.
So why go after other men's hearts? Why create these environments? Why men's ministry? Why men's initiatives? Why go after the hearts of men?
It's our role. It's our duty. It's our joy.
He's losing points, but he's got some good answers.
Privilege.
Mhm.
Okay, it's the privilege. Yep.
It's the 4th part of the gospel.
Yeah. Go. What else?
Jesus would. I mean, I know it sounds like, what would Jesus do? But
Yeah.
he did. He would. It sounds simple. I've already lost. I don't care.
Because if men are the problem, they can be the solution. That's why.
Mm-hmm. I've got we're at war. We're at war.
Yeah.
I need more guys that can hold a gun around me.
And know how to point it at the enemy and not one another.
Not one
Yeah.
another.
So that brings me to the next question. So why is it important to talk about men's roles in the kingdom? Why is it important to talk about the role of men and the role that men play in the kingdom?
It's the why.
That's good.
I think you answered it.
It needs to be brought out into the light. If we don't talk about it, we don't get better at it.
I'm going to say because it makes a difference.
Mm.
You know, I think about that scene in the Kingdom of Heaven, Balaam.
Oh, yeah.
Who are you to make these men knights?
Yeah, the bishop. He's like,
Right.
Do you really think that's going to make a man fight better?
Make a man a better fighter. Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
just making him a knight, making him a better fighter.
that's right. And so I think that's the image of that answer. Any more?
I think it goes back to what you said a while ago about the answer to the previous question.
It's Matthew 28:19, right?
All right. So how do you align with allies? How do you connect? Let's make it Zoe. Let's say Zoe. How do you align? How do you become an ally with Zoe? If this is what you guys do day to day, and you do, how do men do that? We're changing the one word now.
WWW.
Yeah.
Can we even go back further, though, Michael? And even before, how do we align? How do we help men embark on the journey of getting their hearts back, right? One of the things we talk about often is environments. We create environments where men can experience the more love, life, and freedom that Jesus has for them, the abundant life in John 10:10. So, the environments, one in particular that's coming up in September is the Heart of a Warrior Encounter West.
Great environment.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's in this epic location in Buena Vista, Colorado. And there's something about being in an environment like that where you're at least temporarily disconnected from the busyness you referred to, Jim. You can actually turn off your cell phone if you want to, right? And plug in with the other men around you, but most importantly with God. Those environments matter so, so much.
Yeah, they do. And we believe that the book and going to the weekends are absolutely vital to everything that you asked, the questions you asked. Without that, it's hard to move forward.
Yeah, there's a reason why when all the recruits come in to a training base and they shave their heads, they take their clothes.
They wear all the same thing.
And they they have their name, but all of a sudden it's basic training to become a unit that knows what to do and can do it well. And I think that's what the weekends to us are far more. We even stopped calling them retreats. I remember one guy several years ago said, "You can't call this a retreat. I'm exhausted."
Yeah, and I'm advancing.
And I love it. And he loved it. So I think that there's some orientation, there's some training to find like-hearted, like-minded is to be in an environment together. Yes. And I think that's what you're describing, Greg.
Yeah, and let me clarify before we move on to, you don't have to shave your heads when you come to the Heart of a Warrior Encounter, listeners.
You do get bonus points, but
you do. You win the game.
I have the privilege of hearing Greg on the phone with allies all day long, and it seems like there's multiple scenarios, but at least two scenarios. One is a guy who's by himself, and if I've heard Greg say this once, I've heard him say it 100 times, just find one guy, make a friend, have one other person that you can talk about these things with, start there. And if it's at a church, Greg has got some great questions. How do you get your pastor involved? Is there a way to get your pastor involved? Is there a way to get some good materials into your group? How can we help you? Can we come there?
And that what you're saying is very important that our listeners hear this, is that so much of this is conversation. It really is. You go to our website, zoe.org/allies. You email us at allies@zoe.org. And we don't just want to send you an email back with, here's this link, buy this thing. We really do want to have a conversation, because being able to partner with God to design what's going to reach the hearts of the men in your area of influence is so important, to know your heart, your pastor's heart, your church heart, or your small group heart, the place you're meeting. There's so many variables that we can't just plug it into a computer and spit out some answer.
Yeah.
And we love walking with each of you to find what it is that culture needs to be like. What does that environment need to be like?
And what if the goal is not ministry?
That's exactly right. Because so much of it is, Michael, is the friendships, is the relationships.
So what's the goal?
Intimacy, oneness, and connectedness.
With God and each other. Yeah.
Exactly.
We say it like a pledge of allegiance. It's
like
just
the Boy Scout.
That's right.
And if there's something that's impressive, guys, everybody hear this on Explore More, and my friends that are here right now. When we have churches that talk to us, or we have men's ministries, or 4,500 church people that are in charge of that.
Story earlier.
You know what they hear? They hear that. They hear the friendship.
Consistently.
Intimacy. Yep. That's what they're impressed with.
Those two guys were
weren't they not?
They knew.
They knew
it was a secret sauce, or it was a better goal than often is established, which is getting through these whatever many chapters of some material. That's not the objective. The objective is friendship.
That's why we've created something called the 2-year plan. And when you read through the 2-year plan, or the leader's guide that's on our website, you don't see, hey, you've got to start here, end here, do this, do that. There is some of that, but it starts with intimacy. It starts with friendship.
That's why when I wrote, and you guys helped me then do a lot of editing, writing the leader's guide, there's 4 or 5 pages of just, okay, what are the variables that you're stepping in? Because it's just not cookie cutter. I wish it could be that easy. And when we try to make it that easy, the results aren't deep. They're not good.
Yeah.
And guys finish another class, but I'm not sure that they have gone to war together. And those kind of brotherhoods and friendships and teams really become a force in the kingdom. And they take
time.
They take time. 2 years. It's a 2-year plan because we believe it takes at least 2 years to get your heart back, and to do that in a fellowship of hearts. You can see what's stacked up against you right there just with time. But what if the weekends, you can come away from those weekends? That's what happens on the weekends. You can go deeper, quicker
Yeah.
in a long weekend
Right.
and take that stuff home where you don't need another book or you don't need a study. You just need time to decompress and share what happened to you
So,
at
Michael,
that weekend.
with that, this is a good analogy from my heart anyway, is when you played basketball or whatever, football and
mhm.
all the different baseball, as well as fishing, golfing, all the things men like to do. And you learn so much by watching somebody. Did you watch somebody shoot? Did somebody,
Sure.
come and
Emulated,
emulate it?
I practiced as John Havlicek.
That's
Tells
right.
you
And
who
as
my
a
heroes
kid,
were.
I'm Dale Murphy growing up, right? Because I was a Braves fan,
Yep.
And so you try to swing the way he swung,
Yeah.
all those things.
Yeah, you play the way they played. Yep.
And so we get the great opportunity at Zoe and the privilege and the honor, and we say it humbly, a lot of people love to emulate what we have going on, this intimacy. And it's not as emulate some kind of small group, Jim. It's they see intimacy, they see friendships, and they
Yeah.
want that too.
Amen.
It's an honor.
Why don't you guys take our friends and allies just a little deeper if they're curious, if they stuck with the podcast this long and listened, what are some places they can go for connection? Describe some of the tools and resources and spaces out there that you guys are.
Greg's phone number, my phone number.
Yeah.
Greg's email, my email.
Let's start with allies@zoe.org. We would love for you to guys connect
An
us
email.
there. That is the email, allies@zoe.org, or our website.
Yeah. And we're talking about emailing. If you're, again, I want to reiterate, if you're the one guy who's looking for one other guy,
Call us.
really
Email
call us, email us,
We're
go to
helping.
zoe.org/allies, get some more information there and just reach out. Or again, if you're the guy that's leading a men's ministry of 4,500 churches, we want
Yeah.
to talk to you too
Both-
and just
both
come
ends.
alongside you.
And it's churches. We have 3 categories that we love to think about at Zoe, which is churches, nonprofit men's ministries, and the individual. The one guy on the back porch with his book, What Do I Do Next? And so we have all 3 of those great opportunities to talk about those. Those are on our website. So contact us there. We'll schedule an interview kind of conversation with you, and Jim and I will do that together or individually with you and try to help you find out what's next.
Well, I was thinking, just as you were talking too, as we give some encouragement of resources and tools, and there's audio. If this is your first Exploring More podcast, go back upstream. Go
We've
look at
had
those.
some other allies
Go look at those
talks.
first
Yeah.
50 and listen to some of the conversations that we've had. SJ does an incredible job of putting video on YouTube. There's the YouVersion Bible devotionals, the YouVersion
Right.
Bible reading plans about Heart of a Warrior. All those are great information for orientation, but they won't see you home. They won't see you through this battle. It's
Right.
still about connecting with others who are doing that. But you can go through the YouVersion. I was so excited a few years ago when we started that. You can ask people to go through them with you.
Yeah, you can. You can go through as a group. Yep. We had a group do it from, I don't even remember where they were from, but it was about 40 guys going through it,
Yeah.
just on their phone every day. And then you can comment back and forth
Yeah.
about what was impactful for you.
It's fun, SJ, when we're just kind of perusing Facebook and suddenly we see a Heart of a Warrior YouVersion app promotion come up from another church, for example, or somebody's going through Heart of a Warrior and because we have common interest, it shows up. It's just neat to see.
On Facebook, that's another place
Yeah,
to
so
connect with
exactly.
with us.
We love to create environments on Facebook, like Facebook Lives and things of that nature, in order for you as a group to go through whatever the particular theme might be. We did What's Wrong with Men, for example, was one of the ones we launched with, and we've probably done 6 or 8 now. So that's one of the areas. We've recently launched a probably every 6 to 8 week phone call for leadership, where we do a conference call, and Jim and I have somebody in the hot seat and pray and encourage them about whatever it is that they're doing. And so we love to do that as well. Allies retreats maybe in the future. We'll see. God's really bringing lots of opportunities, Jim, through leadership and other churches and nonprofits that love reaching the hearts of men, and we love being in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, Jim's answer to the question was my phone number and my email. He's that direct.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk, so I know, Jim, I think as your heart is worn on your sleeve, you know how important this is, and you're ready to skip several steps and say, let's have a conversation. Let's connect. And so email Jim@zoe.org, Greg@zoe.org. Anything else you guys want to say before we wrap up? It's such a big topic, but we're going to have a lot more conversations on engaging the hearts of men, but
Yeah,
this
no
one
doubt.
particularly for ministry. initiatives.
We're July in this podcast, and a lot of people are thinking, churches particularly, what are we going to do this fall?
Yeah.
We recognize and we understand that things are semester driven. So when we say 2-year plans, pastors that might be listening, we understand that you're semester driven, and that's okay. Our encouragement as you would even look through the 2-year plan is that, as true as that is, look at this as a larger journey.
Yeah.
And so this fall, we have a deal coming up where we're going to give our video material that we usually sell in a USB drive. We're going to give that away with a case of books because we want to really encourage our men to go through the book. Here's the video content, and then let's go. And then you're going to have with that some consulting, if you will, for lack of a better term, from me.
Coaching, teammates in that.
From me and Jim, and whatever churches want that, small groups, men's ministries, whatever.
You guys have done a great job putting the collateral stuff together too, the graphic stuff.
We have everything ready for you to make it as easy as you want it to be.
That's right.
Or we're willing to help.
A lot of churches don't have that area that can put all that together, a flyer
they don't
and
have
all
a
that.
graphic
So you guys have done all that work for them, and with a change of a few details, all of a sudden a flyer becomes your flyer, and your announcement, your email. So anything else, Jim?
That's it.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
We love you guys.
We just want to encourage you listeners, if you've got questions about anything that we've talked about today, email us. Again, Greg at Zoe, Jim at Zoe.org, allies at Zoe.org. If you've got questions for us here at the podcast, Exploring More, email us there, or show ideas, or hey, maybe we have some guys come on that have been successful in reaching the hearts and engaging the hearts of men. I just had my own show idea. I don't have to email myself that idea though, right? But the email is exploringmore@zoe.org. We do have one of those environments coming up we want to let you know about in September in Buena Vista, Colorado. Visit zoe.org/events for more information about that
September
weekend. Yeah, in September. It'll be great to have you there with us.
Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody for being with us on the Exploring More podcast. We look forward to connecting with you next week. Remember, with God, there's always more, and you were made for more. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.